This is CBC Here and Now.
This is supposed to be the Trans-Canada Highway just outside the town of Port aux Basques, obviously looking nothing like it did a few days ago.
Well, there's not much you can do about it. It's nature, right?
I mean, I'd like to get home, but, there's not much of that many options at this point, right?
In the 12 years I've lived in Newfoundland, the road has been terrible. If the government had kept up on the infrastructure on the highway at this end of the province, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation.
And the situation is stuck, still cut off from the rest of the island for at least another week.
Repairing the major damage brought on by those record rainfalls.
Tea time, that's all I was thinking. It's like, okay, I'm getting home and having a nice hot cup of tea. We're finally out of it, because it was the waiting and waiting that was the worst part of it.
Waiting for a helicopter rescue.
As the water began to rise, this couple sent out a much-needed call for help.
Spreading immunity. Some very brave 5 to 11-year-olds are getting their first COVID-19 shots today. Coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, tonight we get a bird's eye view of the damage on the southwest coast.
And just take a look at this.
The repair work is underway, but the Premier says it could be a week or more before roads reopen. Here and Now's Peter Cowan is live in Port aux Basques. So Peter, what more can you tell us about the damage?
Carolyn, if you think about the Trans-Canada Highway, it really is the spine that connects all the communities on the west coast of Newfoundland, and tonight that spine has been severed in at least 4 places. And from the air, you really start to get a sense of just how bad some of that damage is, because all of that rain really just built up and had nowhere to go, and rather than going through the culverts, it went right over them, taking them out, leaving so many places where crews now have so much work to try and fix this. My colleague Garrett Berry was up in a helicopter today checking out the damage, and he really saw for himself just what has to be done.
What's so obvious from this high angle is just the size of these washouts. In comparison to the highway equipment brought in to fix them, they're massive, and the trucks are puny. You can only imagine how much fill will be required to fill up these big holes. And in the meantime, water levels are still pretty high in other parts of the region. It's no wonder that the minister responsible for highways in this province thinks it could take a week for all of this to get fixed. In the meantime, one of the only ways to get in and out of Port aux Basques right now is on a helicopter like this.
Well, we saw the Premier, speaking of helicopters, came into the region for a brief visit today. He flew over that as well and got a chance to check out the damage. He landed, briefly met with the mayor, and took off again, headed back. And one of the things they are doing is putting in place contingency plans, because helicopters are going to be key over the next few days, key to bring in all sorts of medications or other urgent supplies, key to getting people out who've been stranded over the next few days, because it is clear that this isn't just going to be a 1 or 2 day problem, this is going to be a 1 or 2 week problem.
The water levels are down compared to what I was expecting, and of course compared to some of the footage that we've seen, so that's a good sign. Some of the damage, however, is a bit worse when you see it in person compared to when you see some of the shots. Fairly significant sized craters in the middle of the Trans-Canada Highway, and you realize that the crater is more than just a crater. It represents a separation from the people of Port aux Basques and some other communities to the rest of the province. I mean, we don't want to promise anyone a time frame, as you can imagine, but it certainly looks like it'll be more than a week getting all the main 4 sites fixed. And of course, that's not including all the assessments that need to be done of all the side roads and everything else. But I think it's going to be more than a week before it's back to normal, but a week before it's passable.
So, what's going to happen over the next week, especially in Port aux Basques, where people are going to need supplies? That's where they've got contingency plans. Marine Atlantic is going to be key. The ferry here in Port aux Basques is going to leave tonight, and it's then going to come back, bringing in any sort of supplies that the province needs. The other thing they're going to be doing is they're going to be running the ferry from North Sydney to Argentia to make sure the rest of the province, which would normally get its supplies through Port aux Basques, is still able to be fed.
We made the decision this morning that we would move the service with the Blue Patees and the Highlanders to Argentia. That's going to commence this evening, and we are going to also restart the service from Port aux Basques to North Sydney with the departure of the vessel tonight. So while there's very few customers in Port aux Basques right now, we will be able to move that traffic to their destination. We're not at a full capacity situation with this contingency plan, but we are going to have a link that will keep essential goods moving between Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia, as well as any passengers who are trying to get to their destination.
So people who want to get out of Port aux Basques, well, one of the only options is going to be this ferry over here that's leaving just before midnight tonight. Otherwise, it's waiting for the provincial's helicopter service. Marine Atlantic is taking bookings for the ferry service right now. For people who either need to get into Port aux Basques or get out, right now the town says they have started a list. So give them a call, give them your name and the reason they're going to travel, and the province is going to create a priority list to make sure those who have urgent medical needs, for example, get on those first helicopters, while some other people may have to wait. Reporting live in Port aux Basques, I'm Peter Cowan for Here and Now.
Well, as the rain finally let up, people in Port aux Basques began venturing out to pick up some much-needed food and other supplies. One local hotspot, the Foodland grocery store. And here's what some people there think about being cut off from the rest of the province.
I'm here with my client. I'm a home care worker, so I'm going to make sure he has his goods to get him through for the next week, and we'll hopefully make it through okay.
To get a few groceries, because I'm afraid it's going to be like the COVID situation, you know, gouging and that, and so. But I think we're pretty good. It's just the basics that we need it, right?
We want to stock up a little bit anyway, but I don't think it'll be a problem with, I'm sure in a few days we'll be back up and running there. You know, they'll get the roads fixed. I know they got a lot of crews ready to go and start working on it, so hopefully the water recedes enough now that we can get working in it today.
And now they're talking about shipping goods to the rest of the province, so that'll leave us stranded. I mean, this is the gateway to Newfoundland, but, you know, if they move the ferry to, say, Argentia and ship goods into that, then we're going to be stuck.
Not much you can do about it. I'm kind of upset because I have to go see somebody at the home in Stephenville Crossing, and I can't get to see her. So that's kind of upsetting. But other than that, it's nature, right?
Most of my friends are in Corner Brook for school, obviously, and I don't think any of them are coming home for the weekend anymore. And, well, I think my mom was supposed to go to Argentia for work, and I don't think she's going to be able to go there anymore.
I mean, it was anticipated. We had a 1 in a 100-year storm, I think they say, and with the amount of rain we had, so I think it was something that they had anticipated, and I think 4 washouts is probably not too bad, so hopefully we'll get her back up and open up soon.
Well, I feel like if the government had kept up on the infrastructure on the highway at this end of the province, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. Because the road from Port aux Basques to, well, almost Stephenville in the 12 years I've lived in Newfoundland, the road has been terrible.
Well, a tense few hours for a couple living off the grid near South Branch. Last night, water started rising around their yurt. Yes, their yurt. So they needed rescuing. And after a failed attempt by the JRCC and hours of patiently waiting, a Cougar helicopter finally fished the couple and their dog from the raging water surrounding their unique home. Melissa and Chris Batiste shared their story of the rescue.
Close to midnight, I was watching the brook come up slowly. It was like every hour come up a couple inches. That wasn't a big deal, but at around midnight, 1 o'clock, it started coming up 6 inches at a time to a foot at a time. It was very, very fast, and it was about 3 feet in an hour. And at that time I was texting with my mom, and she called the authorities for us. And so when they called, we said we're surrounded by water, and we didn't know if the shores were going to wash out on us or not. So they made the call, we'll come get you out of there.
No, there's no getting out. It was our yurt only. Around here and beyond, the forest was flooded completely. We would have had to swim somewhere. And the river was like not possible by boat or anything. And we heard the helicopter, and then we finally saw the helicopter above the yurt. And it was just kind of was strange for a while. There's a big helicopter right above the yurt. But then the guy was lowered down, and he come over and explained to us how he's going to do the job of getting 3 of us in the helicopter. And then when the helicopter started lifting us up, there was trees left and right. So I was expecting one of us to hit a tree as the wind was blowing us around. So that was kind of really freaky. I was worried about him jumping out or tipping us over and me landing in a tree. So that was the scariest part, honestly, was him and getting from the ground into the helicopter. That was actually comforting just to be out of the damn helicopter. Yeah, it was nice. Like tea time, that's all I was thinking. It's like, okay, I'm getting home and having a nice hot cup of tea. We're finally out of it, because it was the waiting and waiting that was the worst part of it. Like, are we going to go? When are we going to go? But so once we landed, I was just like, okay, time for tea, it's over. The water's receding now. So, and then even when we left, we looked at the water levels from the yurt. It was much better. So we'll go back and there'll be a lot of trees down and whatnot from water. But it looked pretty good. The yurt is going to be safe, and that's all we care about. As soon as the road is fixed, we're gone. Yeah, and then we'll put our hip waders on, cross the brook, and be back to home.
Wow, what an incredible story. Yeah, lots of rain. Just going to give you the total amounts from what Environment Canada released this morning. 195.6 millimeters is what was recorded in the Cadre Valley yesterday, and we're over a 24 or 48-hour period. Port aux Basques, 165.1 millimeters. The rest of those numbers haven't really changed, except Cartwright, you got about 45.8 millimeters of rain. Now, those did break records. In fact, 24-hour record for Port aux Basques. The new record now is 136.1. That broke the old one from 1982. And then the 2-day rainfall was 165.1 millimeters, and that broke the record from, or rather, those are opposites. So July 1979 was the 24-hour, and then 1982 was the 2-day total. So certainly lots of rain. The good news is all of that has ended for now. We do have the next weather system, or what's affecting the majority of Labrador, is this warm front. On the other side of that, we have some freezing rain. In fact, Happy Valley Goose Bay has been out of power since about 3 a.m. this morning. Only recorded about 3 to 4 hours of freezing rain, but we are seeing those rainfall, freezing rain warnings rather, for Churchill Falls and Lab City. I'll get into those details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, today marked the start of vaccinations for children between 5 and 11 years of age in this province. Some of the first children got their COVID-19 vaccinations at an Eastern Health Clinic in St. John's. Here Now's Mark Quinn was there.
I have an idea. She can pinch you with a needle on that side, and I can just like do little pinches on this side.
No, I don't want to get the needle yet.
It took some bravery, along with some support from her dad and the province's chief medical officer of health, for Ellie Mahoney to get her first COVID-19 shot.
You're good. Here we go.
You know what?
So
Being brave is all about doing stuff.
Don't move.
And still doing it. You did it.
There we go.
And Ellie wasn't the only one feeling a mixture of powerful emotions.
Oh, it's great. I don't know who's more nervous about doing it, me or the kids, to be honest with you. It's been a couple of years since I've given any vaccines to kids, but they've been great little troopers.
And here is another one of those troopers, Ellie's brother, Thomas Mahoney.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Little tiny pinch. Don't move. Well done.
Fitzgerald says a day after Tuesday's announcement, more than 15% of 5 to 11-year-olds were already booked for shots. Thomas has this advice for the children who are coming next.
It doesn't actually hurt, but it's just a little scary when you get it.
Thomas and Ellie's father said it wasn't easy to watch, but he believes it's a small, important step towards reaching some kind of new normal.
You never like seeing your kids being upset, but we also understand, and they understand as well, the value in doing it, and the idea that it'll be worth going through, and we believe when we get out the other side, it's going to take kind of everybody doing their part to do so.
This clinic here at Mundy Pond is where the first 5 to 11-year-olds are getting their vaccines for COVID-19. There's been a steady stream of children and their parents through this clinic all day, and Dr. Janice Fitzgerald hopes that within a few months, this whole population, or at least 90% of it, will be fully vaccinated. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Right, to other news, Marble Mountain is gearing up for a busy ski season. The resort staff want to see the hill and the lodge packed with people in 2022, while the government is once again hoping Marble will attract a buyer, and soon. Here now's Colleen Connors reports.
It's not much to look at with this rain and mild temperatures, but staff are busy inside preparing for what they are calling a revitalized ski culture, complete with large events like Jib Fest, a New Year's Eve event, vendor markets, live music, and food venues for when skiers and riders get off the hill for the day.
They'll be able to walk over across the boardwalk to Bishop's Tavern and check out an open mic with Casey Callahan or a trivia night. It's also going to be happening every Wednesday intermittently. And so by creating multiple events at the same time, we're going to build a ski village atmosphere.
The hill itself will only be closed one day a week, and the villa is reopening to out-of-province guests, all with a budget of $1.2 million. $800,000 for capital investments, installing a new cable on the chairlift, and fixing up the villa, and $400,000 in operating costs. A lot less than last year when government had to spend close to $2 million with a drab 22-day ski season due to weather and COVID shutdowns.
We will have to get creative, there's no doubt, but it's great support nonetheless. We hope to get to the next level a year down the road that we can prove this place a little bit more profitable.
Which is what government, which owns the resort, is certainly counting on. The tourism department brought in a new chair of the Marble Mountain Development Corporation, with the hopes that if the Hills Villa and Lodge get a little facelift this year, if enough snow falls, and if people come out to all the planned events, the hill will attract a buyer.
The greatest asset of Marble Mountain is actually Marble Mountain itself.
A 3-year effort to privatize Marble Mountain ended in July without a deal. The province cancelled its request for proposals. The search is on again with what Crocker calls a more succinct approach.
Yes, government should not be operating ski hills. There are people out there that can operate Marble Mountain and make it a very successful resort and a very successful piece of the West Coast. But it's important right now, while we are still the operators coming season, that we do operate, because Marble Mountain can offer so much to our industry.
Crocker says a successful ski season means packed hotels and restaurants too, a boost the West Coast tourism sector needs. While staff here have grand plans to make this place a real incredible experience this coming winter when all of this is covered in snow, the government is still quick to remind the public that this place is for sale. Now, Crocker wouldn't give any new information or new detail about what this RFP will look like, but he did say that it will all come out in the coming weeks. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Steadybrook.
Coming up tomorrow on Here and Now, I'm going to introduce you to these 3 students. They're students from Lake Crest Independent School, and they've been honored for fighting and combating racism. That story tomorrow.
Well, it's been a rainy day today in eastern areas of the island. Lots of fog as well, but freezing rain this story up through parts of Labrador. I'll get into those details as we head into the weekend.
when the minister responsible for highways in this province estimates it's going to be a week to re-establish the connection through the Trans-Canada Highway. This is why. This is a washout between the town of Port aux Basques and the highway weigh scales, and it is absolutely massive. It is several dozen feet high. The damage around here is stunning to see. There are culverts warped and damaged, not only right here next to me, but all the way down the river. And in the middle, you can actually see bits of highway road paving stuck underneath the water. Not to mention, of course, the guardrails that are just now dangling in the air, attached to absolutely nothing. This is what 160 millimeters of rain can do to a highway. Experts at the Environment Canada weather offices in this province have confirmed that this has been a record-breaking rainfall here in the town of Port aux Basques. The good news is contractors have already been mobilized to fix these washouts. The bad news is there's a lot of them, and there's actually washouts inside of other washouts. So you have to fix the outermost washouts before you can get to the inside ones. Garrett Berry, CBC News, Port aux Basques.
Wow, seeing Garrett down there like that really gives you a sense of how
Perspective.
deep it is.
Yes.
The context of it. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll take a while.
Yeah, it probably took him a while to climb out of there for
I'd
sure.
say.
Well, yeah, so record rainfall from this system that we've been hearing today. St. John's today, pretty gray. Foggy.
It was the grayest day we've had in a long time. Really mild temperatures this afternoon, reaching about 9 degrees. But yeah, lots of rain really for eastern areas of the island as well. Nowhere near, obviously, what the Southwest saw, but pretty rainy. Let's take a look at the numbers. It was also very warm today, 10 to 14 degrees, Stephenville recorded, 15 in Port aux Basques this afternoon. That was the hot spot. And then those temperatures are slowly climbing for Labrador. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, 1 degree. Lab City today, -6, but your temperature overnight dipped to -20, so definitely rebounded quite a bit, and that is where you're sitting right now. A number of areas pretty much staying exactly where you are, and that's pretty much what's going to happen as we head through the evening hours tonight. Not a whole lot of change in the temperatures through tonight. Another 3 degrees right now for Cartwright, and Makova currently sitting at +1. The winds also not nearly as strong as they have been. They're generally, this is sustained winds right now, 20 to about 40 kilometers per hour. Wind gusts a little bit higher than that. The winds are generally going to pretty much stay where they are as well. We might see a little bit of an increase in the wind speeds for eastern areas of the island as we head through the day tomorrow. But overall, all that moisture that we've been talking about is still in place. It's just moving. And we did see some periods of rain today, which were heavy at times for eastern areas of the island. In fact, Terra Nova picked up about 9.5 millimeters in 1 hour this afternoon. And then right now, so far today, I believe it was about 25 millimeters so far that's been recorded at the airport in St. John. So we're continuing to see that. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see it there on the radar with those periods of rain coming in from eastern areas or from the east, and that will generally continue. Now, along this warm front, we have been seeing some freezing rain, certainly for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and that is going to continue as this warm front continues to head northwest. The potential for freezing rain is going to head right with it. So Churchill Falls and Lab City right now under your freezing rain warning. Like I said, the power has been out in Happy Valley, Goose Bay since about 3 o'clock this morning. However, it's further to the west is where that fault is, so likely seeing some freezing rain right now, and that is generally going to continue as that risk of freezing rain heads further northwest. And you can see that perfectly on the future tracker there. By the time we get into the overnight hours, Lab City should start to see that. We're going to see a similar transition from snow through to ice pellets, and then eventually freezing rain for northern areas of Labrador as well. Otherwise, everything that does fall for the rest of the province should fall as rain tonight. The periods of rain, the fog, and the potential for some drizzle will continue as well right across the board. But like I said, temperatures not really moving too much. 8 to 11 degrees, the overnight lows. That's even above where we should be sitting as our daytime highs. The winds will generally be out of the southeast or east, anywhere from 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, and temperatures are going to warm up. Lab City should sit around -4 tonight as your overnight low. As far as tomorrow goes, good chance we'll see some freezing rain at least through the first half of the day. Again, it's slowly moving northwest, so once we get into some of that milder air, it will transition through to rain into the afternoon, and we should see that right across the board for Lab West as well as northern Labrador through the evening hours. And pretty much just the periods of rain, drizzle and fog will continue for the island as well. Generally looking at the temperatures, again, another mild day, 9 degrees in St. John's again for tomorrow. The winds will be out of the southeast, a little bit less breezy, 20 to 40 kilometers per hour, but reaching the double digits as soon as you get to Clarenville, Marystown. Same thing through central. You're looking at about 10 to 13 degrees with rain for Harbour Breton and 9 degrees. And as you head towards the west coast, better chance you'll see a few peaks of sun in the afternoon. Then rain will return, or at least some showers will return as you get into the evening hours. For southeastern Labrador, well above seasonal, 8 degrees in Mary's Harbour tomorrow afternoon, and then those temperatures right across Labrador should be sitting in the single digits on the plus side of the mercury, although not quite windy, 5 to 15 kilometer per hour winds in the west. And that's pretty much your Friday forecast. The weekend is looking not too bad. Some sunshine in there as well. I'll get into those details when I come back.
The view from 200 feet really tells it all. We got access to a helicopter to take a look at the substantial storm damage here on the southwest coast, and I'll tell you all about it coming up on Here and Now.
I don't want to promise anyone a time frame, as you can imagine, but it certainly looks like it'll be more than a week getting all the main 4 sites fixed.
Now we're getting a better sense of the damage on the southwest coast after the big rainstorm. The repairs have started, but officials say it could be more than a week before anyone is driving in or out of the Port aux Basques region. Residents will have access to a helicopter. Now Here Now's Garrett Barry was in that chopper that you just saw. He was capturing video as he hovered around and surveyed the damage today. And as you see, Garrett joins us now live from Port aux Basques. So Garrett, tell us a bit about what you saw today.
Anthony, what was really stunning was to get a good sense of scale of the whole thing. From the air, of course, you can see the backhoes working, but you also see the massive washout that they have to find a way to fill. And you can't help but think, wow, I wonder how many truckloads of fill it is to fill up these holes. We headed north from Port aux Basques and we did see crews working, but there were washouts where no one could get to yet. So there's multiple washouts in a row and they have to fix one before they can fix the other. It not just the highway, there's also damage into some communities on side roads. You also see still water accumulation still pretty high in some areas, but as you mentioned, Anthony, this really has become a story about road work. It started about rain and severe weather. Now it's about culverts and pavement and the job that construction crews have ahead of them to try to get communities back up and running and back connected again, because it still remains, despite some contingency plans being put in place, it's still now tonight a story about neighbors and communities disconnected from each other. Garrett Barry, CBC News in Port aux Basques.
And as we've heard, residents will be relying on aircraft for the transport of people and supplies while the road repairs are happening. Premier Andrew Furey says he's expecting backup from the federal government once they decide how many aircraft are needed.
So we are looking at aircraft support for here. Of course, we have local assets that are being employed, like you saw in the background. I mean, we just came from a stop to transfer a patient here, but we're also reached out to the federal government to see what air supports they can provide for us. I've been in contact with the Minister of Natural Defence and the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and the Minister responsible for Public Safety, all of whom have committed to helping us when we have a better assessment of exactly what aircraft we're going to require. But this is going to be an air support style mission. There's always a triage when you're in a disaster situation like this, or one that's it causes someone to be isolated, and so we'll triage it appropriately. I mean, we're really lucky to have incredible medical professionals here in Port aux Basques with a nice facility, a solid state-of-the-art facility. I think that's something that we're very fortunate to have right here, right now. But obviously, health and safety is the number one priority, so that will be top of the triage kind of pyramid. After that, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we're hopeful that, again, a week, I think people can tolerate maybe not seeing a family member for a week or so, but it's really important with respect to supplies and medical appointments that can't be handled here in Port aux Basques. And we understand that there are there's a threat of supply issues here in Port aux Basques, and that's why we'll use aircraft and other mechanisms to get the essential supplies here when required. Pharmaceuticals are the number one concern, if someone's going to run out of a supply of a crucial medication. And again, that's why we've deployed aircraft to go over the washed out roads to ensure that we're able to deliver those supplies to those who need them.
It truly has been about being resilient, about thinking differently, about behaving differently.
Businesses have had to adapt during this pandemic, and tonight the St. John's business community will come together to celebrate resiliency at an in-person gala event.
Well, when first asked, Inuit elder Ellen Ford couldn't imagine her life as art, but that's what Jennifer Young wanted to create.
Yes, over the last year and a half, the pair collaborated on Unikausiga, which translates to My Story. Ellen shared her experiences growing up in Nain and at residential school, and Young listened, building on those memories to create art pieces that fill Ford with pride.
This piece is Sapugak. This is where my parents would go with them, and they would fish char there. It was a good place. It was good talking about it. Especially being an Indigenous person, I've grown up sometimes having the feeling of people from the outside, because of who you are, you're nothing, and you can't do much. But I've gotten over that now, and I feel, you know, to put it out there and to be able to tell your story. I think it's important for people to know that we're just like people like anybody else.
About 15 years ago, for about a year and a half, I had the pleasure of working with Valerie, who is Ellen's daughter. And Valerie came to my art studio, and I had been doing these large encaustic topographical maps, and I had done one of the area around Hebron. And Valerie came in, saw it, and said, "Ha, my mom could tell you stories." So we started talking and realized that there was something in there.
One of my favorite pieces is the eggs. I used to love going off to get eggs on the islands outside of Nain. That was a fun time. The thing that Mom used to always say to us was, don't take all the eggs, leave one, always leave one behind in the nest.
It's a piece on sealskin, right from the beginning of how it's prepared and all the way through to the final steps of when the edges are chewed to get them ready for sewing.
You could see the sealskin, the back of the sealskin, and the ulu, and us chewing. And when you started, it was very dry and hard and didn't taste very good at all. But by the end of the chewing, by the time we were finished, it was all soft and chewy, and it tasted pretty good then.
When we started, it was called Unkasita, which means stories you should know. But over time, these became Ellen's stories, and it became Unkasika.
Unikausiga.
It went from stories you should know to my story.
This is out in front of the house in Nain.
Okay, with
puppies. We used to love playing with the puppies.
Oh, we spent hours. We'd make coffee, we'd go out, and we'd talk. After each piece was created, Ellen and I would again discuss it. Is this right? Were there changes? And some of them were left as is, and some of them we made some changes. A couple of them actually got scraped away and restarted all over again.
And then I come across pictures from back when, growing up, and hadn't realized I had put it there, and I'd say, now I can take that down to Jennifer and show her, see if it would be any good.
Yeah. Who's this? We did a piece that is not up here about Ellen's relationship to her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We talked about how important love and hugs and learning how to do that physical was not something that was in her childhood or younger years.
I never knew how to hug my children or tell them you love them until very late in my life, even after I had my children. And then gradually, as years went on, it came about the boarding schools and residential schools. I began to understand that why, we didn't know how to love. You see it in the movies, and I always, wish that there was somebody that could come to me and give me a hug and say they love me. That's something I always thought about as I was growing up. And when I started doing it, I thought, that was a good thing.
I know that for us to have any chance at reconciliation, we need to have both sides of the story talking. We need Indigenous and non-Indigenous working together to tell stories, to understand them, to understand the impact of them.
It certainly would strengthen people if they told their stories. It brings strength to them. They realize that their stories are out there, and it's not a bad thing. Because there's a lot that wasn't talked about because they couldn't. And you hear it now. Yeah, it's good.
Powerful story.
What a beautiful
art.
item.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And 16 art pieces were created in total, 8 of which are currently on display at Juniper House. That's the new space for Memorial University's Indigenous Student Resource Center.
At the Craft Council of Newfoundland and Labrador will be showing all 16 pieces, including those that deal with the more difficult topics, starting in February. And our thanks to Katie Breen for putting that together. Well, since the earliest days of the pandemic, plexiglass has become a common sight in stores, schools, and many other places. But those barriers are now being reconsidered in the fight against COVID-19. As Thomas Degler reports, some health experts suggest barriers could even be counterproductive.
Could I get your name, please?
When it comes to plexiglass, for many businesses, it turns out the simplest solution may have been the most effective all along.
We've been, from the beginning, told that we didn't need masks, and then we need a mask. We told that we need to put plexiglass, then we told them plexiglasses don't really work.
Early on in the pandemic, that see-through barrier began popping up everywhere. In libraries, restaurants, even legislatures. Plexiglass became a hot commodity suppliers couldn't keep up. But now, from public health experts, a warning.
There's even some observational evidence suggesting that this actually could make things worse rather than better.
There's consensus that while plexiglass can help stop droplets from spreading between people who are face-to-face, it won't prevent smaller coronavirus particles suspended in the air from moving around the room. Aerosol dynamics expert Jeffrey Siegel has been saying so for many months.
We want good ventilation, and when we erect barriers to airflow, we can sometimes kind of create dead zones or trap the air.
At this Montreal spa, they did the right thing, avoiding big plexiglass walls that trap air, instead installing a barrier for protection at the reception and leaving that mask on behind the plexiglass.
We've decided to keep it, and we might keep it forever.
Experts are reiterating proper ventilation remains crucial for any workplace, including this chicken and waffle shop where they keep a window open and that barrier up just at the cash register.
Bottom line is that we don't know where everyone who has been when they come in to order for takeout. We don't know if they're fully vaccinated. We don't know if they've traveled. And for me personally, I want to protect the staff here.
Nearly 2 years after COVID first hit, the science is still evolving as the virus is still spreading. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, a new honor today for one of Canada's most decorated writers. Canada Post unveiled a special stamp for literary giant Margaret Atwood, one of the country's most prolific and celebrated authors. Her works span more than 50 books of poetry, fiction, critical essays, and graphic novels. Margaret Atwood is 82 years old.
as fat cat or the black sheep, very fortunate to still have this room.
There's a community in the Black Sheep.
I remember it vividly, actually, the first day I held sticks.
I want to capture the gigs, I want to capture the facial expressions.
Creating the song that you want to hear.
That made me feel better listening to that, and maybe I could write my feelings out and see how I like that.
It's really all about the music.
The Delta Ballroom is all dressed up tonight. Yes, it is the 50th anniversary of the St. John's Board of Trade, but that is not the big thing they're celebrating here tonight. It is all about resilience. Anne-Marie Boudreau is the CEO of the St. John's Board of Trade. And Anne-Marie, why was it so important to focus the awards this evening on the theme of resilience?
Because I think resilience really does capture the activity of what we have seen here in our community and throughout businesses over the course of the last 2 years. It truly has been about being resilient, about thinking differently, about behaving differently. And we're coming together tonight because we have 52 incredible nominees who have embodied resilience.
How is that theme embedded in the show? Like, are there new awards? Tell us a little bit about how it's going to show up.
Yeah, it's been a long-standing tradition of the St. John's Board of Trade to celebrate business and to celebrate the success and to come together every year to do that in a grand fashion. But, you know, knowing, and when we assess what 2020 has brought and then what 2021 continued to bring, you know, evaluating business success really had to be rethought. It wasn't about, you know, looking at balance sheets in the same way or looking at profit in the same way. We had to measure differently. So, you know, a few years ago, we did this last year for the first time. We kind of sat down and said, how do we celebrate? You know, how do we measure what's being done and what's happening in our community? And we themed it the Resilience Awards because it truly does define what's happening in our community and what our business leaders have been doing every day.
When you put this theme out to your members and you asked for nominations, what kind of responses did you get?
I think it really struck a chord. I think, you know, the fact that we were measuring success and talking about value to the community and to customers in a different way. We have 52 nominations, far surpassing our expectations and what we thought we would hear. And the fact that we have 52 businesses who want, you know, to share their story and who stand back, and despite what has been thrown at them throughout 2020 and 2021, they are proud of what they've accomplished, and that's exactly what we're coming here tonight to do. So while of course, you know, 50 years is a milestone for the St. John's Board of Trade and one that we do not take lightly, the 52 members and the stories of resilience and the pride and inspiration that we feel for our members, that truly is, you know, the winner and the reason for us to be here this evening.
This is probably the first time in a long time a lot of business owners are getting out. No doubt you've prepared for the occasion. What do you anticipate the tone of tonight's event to be?
You know, it's funny because we've been talking, of course, to members leading up to this, and I think there's a real joy of just being reunited, having that opportunity, you know, to see an old colleague or to revisit with a friend that you probably haven't physically seen or crossed paths with in some time. We have just been hearing, you know, so much anticipation and so much excitement for being back in a room together and not having this awards virtually.
Well, I'm certainly excited to hear more tonight, Anne-Marie. Best of luck this evening. We cannot wait to hear those stories.
Well, thank you very much. Me too.
Okay, time to look ahead to the weekend forecast. So what are conditions going to be like this weekend?
Well, it doesn't look too bad. It's going to be a bit unsettled, but there is some sunshine in the forecast for some of us, which is nice. Let's take a look at the future tracker. This is the same system that has essentially been affecting us all week is going to continue. So we're still looking at that chance of some freezing rain. However, it will likely be to the northern portions of Labrador and maybe just edging in the west, but you should get your temperatures up above zero. So the majority of Lab West should actually be seeing rain into the evening hours on Friday. And then we're still looking at that unsettled conditions through the evening hours. Now, as we get into Saturday morning, it looks like we could see some sunshine, at least to start, and just for a little bit, because some more showers will work their way through as we get into the evening hours, the afternoon hours, and then eventually some more clearing, it looks like, for the west coast. However, eastern areas in that onshore flow, still looking at that potential for some rain through the afternoon, and then it's going to stay unsettled up across Labrador as well. You may see some flurries in the mix through the day on Saturday. Now, as we get into Sunday, better chance of seeing some snow. That area of low pressure moving right back in with some of that colder air, and we will see that chance for some snow. Likely either rain or snow for central areas of Labrador, and then still staying on the warm side of that for the coast. Otherwise, we're back into that southerly flow, so fog possible, along with some showers along the west coast. Eastern areas as we get into Sunday, at least the first half of the day, looking like we could see some sunshine, but we can't rule out either the chance of some showers in the afternoon. So it is looking a little bit unsettled, but not a washout by any means. The temperatures will still be warm on Saturday, 11 or 10 to 13 degrees across the island, a little cooler for the northern peninsula, and 2 to 8 degrees for Labrador. As we get into Sunday, those temperatures are going to start to drop, hence that potential for some snow for Lab West, and then we're really getting into some of the chillier air on Sunday for the west coast, and then you'll see that potential for some snow or at least some flurries as we get into the evening hours. Otherwise, 6 to 9 degrees for central and eastern areas of the island. Temperatures look like they'll stay there into the beginning of next week, and then back up into the double digits for Tuesday with some rain in the morning, and then eventually at this point looking like we should see some clearing skies. Now, for central Newfoundland, you're looking at generally some periods of rain continuing through the day on Tuesday. Some models pointing at 13 degrees through the day. But look at that temperature dropping back down to the 0 degree mark. So there is a potential that we could see some flurries in the mix. And then for eastern Labrador, some clearing possible on Monday, but flurries will return on Tuesday. And then same thing for western Labrador. Monday and Tuesday, you're looking at temperatures well below 0 and some flurries. Take a look at this shot. Northwest Gander River. Lovely shot there by Dean. Thank you for sharing that with us. If you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Yeah, and Dean, the next time you send that, can you sort of identify where the salmon pools are?
I was about to ask you, Anthony, if that's a spot that people would go to look for salmon.
It looks fantastic.
I bet you're missing that right now, hey?
Yeah, out of season, but there's always next year.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's it for us for this Thursday evening. Ashley, you're off tomorrow, so I think Jeremy's going to be with us tomorrow as we head into the weekend. So, yeah, thanks for being with us.
Good night.
See ya.